Noah was kind of a little bit of a surprise.
Look at you scooting around.
We had him in 2012. He was the happiest baby that you would have ever seen. He just would warm up to anybody the second he would meet them and smile and play with them.
It was October 2013. Amanda and James Creighton were raising their 3 children in the western suburbs of Phoenix when suddenly 18-month-old Noah got sick.
We were all sitting down to dinner, and I spoon-fed him a bite of, what we were eating. And I turned my head, and he is just throwing up. And my husband hopped up and took his temperature, and it was 103.5.
The fever persisted for weeks, but doctors couldn't figure out what was causing it.
He gradually started being less friendly, and he gradually started being more lethargic. This is not my son. And there's something really wrong.
They thought it might be related to salmonella poisoning his grandmother had gotten 1 week earlier.
I had asked, could this be salmonella? And they said, absolutely not. He would have bloody diarrhea if he had salmonella. He would have diarrhea, he would be vomiting.
They took Noah to the local hospital for more extensive testing.
We put the baby through so many tests, blood tests, catheter, and it's frustrating putting a very young child through that and still not having answers.
They had to take him in for this MRI. This new surgeon takes a look at the MRI, and he said, this is an abscess, and it's growing. We will have to do a craniotomy, where they cut his scalp from one ear almost all the way over to the other, and they take a piece of his skull out. It was surreal, just completely out of control.
The surgery lasted nearly 4 hours.
When Noah first came back to the room, it was scary. I mean, he was in a coma.
Days later, doctors finally explained the mystery behind his brain infection.
They said, this is Salmonella Heidelberg. And he said that, it doesn't usually happen that they get brain abscesses from Salmonella Heidelberg, but Salmonella is a very virulent bacteria. And when you have a young child with, his immune system is not developed as somebody else's, it will seed in his brain. And he said that it's because of how strong the bacteria is.
Correspondent David Hoffman came across Noah Creighton's story while investigating dangerous new bacterial threats. Over the last 3 years, we've reported on deadly infections at the nation's most prestigious hospitals.
Could you give me just a tube fixator for...
The rise of antibiotic resistance.
Resistant, 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 resistant.
Both in humans and in animals. And now, a common bacteria that has become dangerous in new ways. Salmonella.
Is there enough on this plate to make one person sick?
There's enough to make thousands of people sick.
Many kinds of salmonella are harmless, but some, like the one that sickened Noah Creighton, are becoming more severe and difficult to treat. Salmonella causes more hospitalizations and deaths than any other foodborne illness. It's found on a wide variety of food and sickens more than 1 million Americans every year, about 200,000 from contaminated poultry.
Poultry products carry salmonella more than most other products. And the strains of salmonella that are showing up on these chickens aren't the ones our grandmother knew about. They are tougher, stronger, and many of them are antibiotic resistant.
The story of how Noah Creighton got so sick from salmonella actually starts more than a decade ago, here in Portland, Oregon, 1,000 miles from where Noah lives.
It's part of the outbreak investigation.
It was the summer of 2004 when Oregon health officials noticed that patients were showing up in hospitals with a particularly virulent strain of salmonella.
how many cases we have had.
It was a strain they didn't know much about.
That may be the first phone call that we made.
Okay, we do.
We started looking at cases of Salmonella Heidelberg, and it was a particular pattern that we were very interested in.
Emilio DeBess investigates foodborne outbreaks for the Oregon Health Department. He and his small team keep a close eye on reports from local hospitals, tracking trends in food poisonings, trying to identify the food source that made people sick.
So I talked to my research assistant. I said, let's go to a store. And she goes, why? I said, let's just go to a store.
DeBess wanted to see if the same Salmonella strain that had sickened the victim was on chicken in the store.
So we drove out to the store, and I remember looking at all the chicken and thinking, boy, if I find Salmonella Heidelberg in this chicken, it's going to be huge. And then I thought, well, what's the likelihood? It's been 3 weeks. So I just said, well, I'm just going to pick one here and pick one there and pick another one there. It's finding a needle in a haystack, right? It's just nearly impossible. 3 days later, we got a phone call from the lab saying, your chicken is positive.
And not only positive, but positive for the exact same strain of Salmonella that was in the patient. You know, I said, wow, was that a coincidence? What's the likelihood of that?
8-3.
Hi, my name is Dr. DeBess. I work for the State of Oregon Department of Health.
Interviews with other victims revealed that many had eaten the same brand of chicken that DeBess had brought back from the store. For him, it confirmed that the Salmonella Heidelberg was coming from one company, Foster Farms, the largest poultry producer on the West Coast. And it wasn't just Oregon. Health officials in Washington state were also seeing a significant jump in cases of Salmonella Heidelberg that they traced back to Foster Farms.
After a while, we started calling this molecular pattern, this DNA fingerprint, if you will, the Foster Farms pattern, because it was so tightly associated with people who were eating chicken from Foster Farms.
The illnesses were more serious than just the usual food poisoning. People were being hospitalized.
Salmonella Heidelberg is more commonly found in blood than many of the other Salmonella serotypes, so probably has more propensity to invade through the intestine and get into the body and do more damage.
It all happened under the watch of USDA's inspection arm, the Food Safety and Inspection Service, FSIS, which has inspectors in every slaughterhouse in the country.
Has the inspection process kept pace with the times?
No, it hasn't. I mean, you know, we have inspectors that are doing the same thing they've been doing for years and years and years before Jack in the Box, looking for abscesses,
bruises or bones.
Bruises, bones, some quality issues.
Something you can see.
So something that you can see. So it's kind of like they sniff, they smell, and they look. That is not the modern way for us to be applying what we know from a scientific standpoint to providing good oversight.
Most inspectors aren't looking for bacterial threats like Salmonella.
About 100 cases of Salmonella has prompted health officials in Oregon and Washington to warn people about improperly cooked chicken.
The State Department of Health says that a, quote, great majority of this strain of Salmonella came from Foster. Everyone is being cautious, but there is no recall in place.
By fall of 2013, new strains of Salmonella Heidelberg were hospitalizing scores of victims and spreading from California to more than a dozen other states, like Arizona, where it would eventually sicken Noah Creighton. That leaves the burden on consumers to handle and prepare poultry as carefully as possible.
I use a meat thermometer when I cook my meat. I use all of the food safety measures. I use antibacterial wipes.
Last May, as the Foster Farms Salmonella outbreak entered its 15th month, Jennifer Robinson was cooking chicken for her family the way she often does.
Say I have the raw chicken on my cutting board. I'll put it into the frying pan, and then I will take everything, put it in the sink, wash it with antibacterial, take the antibacterial wipes, wipe down the countertop, wash my hands with that antibacterial soap. I'm extremely careful.
But days later, despite all the precautions, her son AJ landed in the hospital with a bloodstream infection.
It's very scary when your child is sick and you don't know what's going to happen. And it's scary when a doctor says we don't know what kind of bacteria this is.
Testing would show it was Salmonella Heidelberg, and it matched the Foster Farms pattern. In the end, the CDC says, the Foster Farms outbreak was the largest from chicken in history, spreading to 29 states and sickening 634 people. And this was just one of a dozen Salmonella outbreaks associated with poultry in 2013 alone.
Since this has happened, some things have come to my attention that are frightening for a mom. So, for example, it doesn't seem like our governmental regulators have much enforcement power over things like this. If Foster Farms is able to say, no, we don't want a recall because we don't have any hard evidence, then we don't have laws that are protecting us.
Even though chicken is causing people to become ill, government is allowing Salmonella and Salmonella Heidelberg to be just part of the chicken equation. And until they just come to grips with the fact there isn't an acceptable level of Salmonella, it's going to remain this way for the foreseeable future.